Welcome back to the Ricky Matthews Show from the Citizens Bank Studio. Hope you're having a great day. I really enjoyed that conversation with Senator Jeremy England. So many dedicated legislative leaders from the coast in Jackson. And as he mentioned during our conversation, Hank Zuber, who's with the Mississippi House of Representatives, who's from District 113 over in Jackson County. He's been a regular here on this show, someone I really enjoy checking in with from time to time. But Hank's a little under the weather, but he's been burning the midnight oil in the legislature long before they even convene because he's got his hands full. But before we go any further, let me just say, how you doing, Hank?
Ricky, good to be with you. I'm doing great. Like I said, I'm a little bit under the weather, but that's we'll get through it. Keep going. You can't stop.
So as Jeremy mentioned, you've got your hands full. Why don't let's remind people what leadership roles you have.
Okay, I'll be happy to. As you know, Ricky, the Speaker, Jason White, created a new select committee a year and a half ago before we came in for the first year of the new term, and it's called State Affairs. So it has a broad and very general jurisdiction over just about anything he wants to assign to my committee. It's not limited in scope. It's not limited to jurisdiction. I kind of call it, Ricky, the watchdog committee for the state legislature. So, over the past year and a half, we have dealt with just about every issue that you can imagine.
It's been, I know it's been a journey. It's been great catching up with you along the way. I was just mentioning to Jeremy, with last year sort of being 100, would have been slated for, I think, 124 days. This year, the legislative session is 90. It felt like last year just took forever for things to get going. This year, you're feeling momentum in the first week. It's incredible, the difference, isn't it?
Oh, the difference is, it's enormous. Ricky, if I'm not mistaken, I think tomorrow is the request deadline. And I think next Monday, it's actually the deadline to drop the bill. So it's moving very fast.
Yeah, I mean, listen, as it relates to, Jason White, the Speaker of the House, who has been on this show a couple of times and someone I look forward to having back on soon. Man, he's all in on the state income tax situation because he understands in order for Mississippi to stay competitive from an economic development point of view, we have to be willing to make bold decisions. And as Jeremy and I discussed, the state income tax has been something that's been under consideration and discussion and debate for the past 3 or 4 years and even beyond. This year, though, Hank, it feels like there's a bit more momentum than we've seen, a lot more alignment around it. Is that because of just it's a buildup, it's maybe the natural next step on a progression of conversations, or what do you attribute that to?
Ricky, a couple of things. Obviously, it is the natural progression, but I think the Speaker spent a lot more time over the summer building the foundation, working with the Lieutenant Governor, working with the Governor, and more importantly, working with the business community within the state of Mississippi to build up the support and this groundswell that we see to make sure it passes. But if I may, I cannot speak highly enough about Speaker White. We had a meeting with him, Ricky, a couple of weeks ago, and he said, "Hey, I'm not up here to occupy a seat. I am up here to move the needle and to make Mississippi better. If we're not going to try to get that done, I can go back home and make a lot more money." And he's exactly right. I mean, it's we're up here to move the needle, take up the tough issues like tax reform and CON and everything else, and just try to make Mississippi better, because there's a lot of issues that have not been dealt with. Everyone's kind of been scared to bring them up, hers included, since I've been up here, and that's 25 years. So I commend the Speaker. I commend his leadership and his courage to take these issues up.
Well, you mentioned CON, which is the certificate of need process, and maybe taking some common sense approaches as we go forward. Maybe we'll have time to chat about that. We probably should have spent an entire show together, Hank, and we will in the coming weeks. We'll spend a lot more time together. But coming back to the income tax, what's interesting about the bill that was dropped is that it is more comprehensive. It is more responsive to what I think the speaker and the team that put that bill together believes might be some of the pushback from that, from municipal governments, for example. How do we deal with PERS? How do we deal with MDOT in the process? Really working hard to overcome all the objections and to make the numbers work. And the other thing is that it's not something that, you're just not going to flip a switch and it's going to be the done deal. I think the bill pushes it all the way into like 2036, if I remember my read on the bill. But, man, they have really burned some midnight oil on this one, haven't they?
This is not something that's happened overnight, I mean, Trey, Jason, the House leadership, I mean, they've worked on this the last 3 years. And it's taken a lot of work, and I agree with you. I mean, they have addressed every single issue and every point of opposition that has come up in that last 3-year period. But, Ricky, for me, it comes down to just the general public policy reasons why we should do this. And if you don't mind, let me take a minute and discuss that with your listening audience. Number one, okay, it moves away from taxing work to consumption. That's a good thing. Number two, it provides a dedicated stream of income to MDOT and PERS instead of just willy-nilly approaching it every year. Who's got the best lobbyists? Who's got the most money to spend to get this amount of money for a transportation project or whatever it may be? With this bill, you have a dedicated source of revenue. You get the politics out of it, and it helps MDOT and it helps PERS become more viable. Thirdly, and lastly, Ricky, is that you are encompassing, and this has never been talked about, and you can appreciate this. Just from my own personal experience, we have a large cash economy in this state, and we are now capturing that economy with the taxation on consumption as opposed to income tax. So for those three general broad policy reasons, I think it's a great bill and something that we need to get done, and this is the year to do it.
Well, listen, the executive director of MDOT and I have had many conversations about the fact that just an annual allocation is never going to address the kind of challenges that we have in terms of infrastructure in this state. And listen, when you think about the roads and highways of the state of Mississippi and our economic development efforts, those things kind of go hand in hand. And then you think about the state retirement program, PERS. The reality of it is we know we had deep discussions about this last year, that there are unfunded liabilities related to that. And the goal is to get it to at least 80%. But I think the bill would put as much as $100 million a year into the PERS program until it reaches that 80% threshold. And then other things can start to kick in. But, I mean, this is something we've got to address, and you're not going to address that problem incrementally, are you?
Well, no, you're not. And, the lieutenant governor has pretty much said that this is the year that the Senate, one of his main issues is PERS and how to solve it. So I'm looking forward to what they send over. But, it's part of that big picture is coming up with a dedicated stream of income. And that's what House Bill 1 does.
It's amazing how far encompassing that is. It really is. And you look at state leaders and how they're right out the bat coming out in support. And I would say in the past, I sense a bit of a disconnect in the big three when it came to this conversation. Now, some of that disconnect is simply we just don't have all the cards on the table yet, and that's often the case with, as you pointed out, something that's building momentum over a number of years. It takes a little bit of time for everybody to get on the same page about things. But man, I see forward momentum like I've never seen before. And listen, as a guy who cares deeply about this state, you're a very successful lawyer. You're a numbers guy. When you look at the numbers personally, you look at projections and all the aspects of what it would take to pull this off, do you come out of it saying, okay, you've addressed my concerns?
It does. And obviously, the number one concern that not only I have, but your listening audience would be, hey, are we going to end up in a position like I think it was either Kansas or Oklahoma, where they cut too fast, too much, and they had to come back and actually raise taxes. But this is over an extended period of time. And again, let's not forget that we were going to capture that additional tax on the cash economy that we have. So, those people that are getting paid in cash and maybe not paying all the taxes, quite frankly, that they should through the, tax and consumption and the sales tax, we're going to bring that extra revenue in. It's over an extended period of time, like you said. So all of my concerns have been addressed, and I think it's a well thought out bill. It's not something, Ricky, that happened overnight. Chairman Lamar, Speaker White have been working on this for the last, 3 years. This.
Yeah, I know they have. In fact, we invited this morning for trade to come on and join me and talk about some of that process. Hey, when we come back, we're going to continue our conversation with Representative Hank Zuber and find out, what's going on in his world that requires him to burn so much midnight oil. He's been working hard for his constituents and for the state. We'll see more of Hank after this break. Welcome back to the Ricky Matthews Show from the Citizens Bank Studio. Have Representative Hank Zuber with us today from the Mississippi House of Representatives from Jackson County. Grew up in Ocean Springs. A good friend, someone who's been on the show many times. And one of the committees that the House Speaker, Jason White, put Hank Zuber in charge of is called the House State Affairs Committee. And I know that this multifaceted, you got a long list of to-do items, but one of the things you talked to me about last week was the state's IT. This is information technology infrastructure, which we know has issues. In fact, I'll mention one thing to you. When I was involved and as a leader in the strategic planning efforts for Knight Ridder, back when the Sun Herald was owned by Knight Ridder, one of the things that we did is a lot of current process analysis, and obviously, since digital technology was going to be our future, we spent a lot of time looking at our infrastructure. And so you can't go to where you want to go if you don't know where you are now. And when you do an assessment of the current situation, the age of the systems, the age of the software, all the work that has to be done to understand where we are, you get to really understand gaps. When you did this assessment, how concerned are you about the IT infrastructure of our state and whether it's meeting our needs or not?
So that's a very good question, Ricky. So what we have is our goal, and what the speaker has charged me with, is to bring Mississippi's IT structure into the 21st century. We still have some agencies. You're going to find this unbelievable, but we still have some agencies that are still using hard drives and mainframes. So we're going to look at moving away from the mainframes to hard drives to cloud storage. That is the charge that I was given to. And we are going to try to get that done, hopefully within a certain time period. We haven't decided exactly how long yet, but it's something that we need to do, Ricky. Moving to cloud storage, it's more efficient, it's more secure. You got the ability to share information with the various agencies. CPS, Child Protection Services, could share information with their local chancery court or with the Department of Public Safety. And it's extremely, extremely important that we get that done. And, it's something that really hasn't been looked at, but now is the time. And you're going to have some agencies that are going to push back because they have their own IT vendor. They've got their long-time established relationship with their sales rep and everything that goes with that. But the numbers, and this will astonish and get the attention of your listening audience. If we move completely to the cloud, get away from hard drives, mainframes, the updates that are required, we could save. You're talking about finding a way to pay for this, tax cut if we had to. If we move completely to cloud storage, we could save approximately $62 million a year.
Wow. I'm not surprised by that. Where every industry in the world is going to client-server approaches where you don't have the software housed, obviously in-house. It's housed at the cloud level. The state's just not where it needs to be. And let me tell you another point. Where if you've got, for example, if you have licenses involved, what they're having to do, and in some cases maybe they can't perform certain services, they're having to actually go out to third parties and pay a fee. So, we're getting there may be some additional savings there, at least for the taxpayer who's having to offset going to that third party because the in-house capability doesn't exist. And we shouldn't be in a position like that, should we?
No, absolutely not. Like I said, it's something that we're looking at. We're going to try to get it done. And I mean, we need to get it done, not just because of the savings and it's the right thing to do, but it will enable the legislature. It gives us the ability to come up with better public policy because we're able to get that information in real time. And we're able to ascertain, the legislature is able to ascertain that information instead of having it go through the agency, and we're getting only what the agency wants us to have.
Yeah. Well, look, as a former CEO who was significantly empowered by information, the ability to be able to go in and pull at any moment and do comparison between companies that I was responsible for, et cetera, boy, I can't tell you how important that is. And you need as a legislator to have the access to that. Maybe one of the reasons you don't get the pushback, one of the reasons you get the pushback is because they don't want to allow ready access to that information.
Absolutely. Ricky, you hit the nail on the head. Absolutely. Yeah. And it's a matter of turf protection too.
Yeah, of course, at the end of the day, it's not their decision once the legislature decides this is something we've got to address. So we're almost out of time, but do you have a cohort on the Senate side who's working on these issues with you?
Well, it was Bart Williams, but I was just advised, I don't know if you knew this, but I was just advised that the lieutenant governor changed that committee chairmanship from Bart to Scott Delano. So it looks like I'll probably be working with Scott on that issue.
Well, good luck to y'all as you nail it down. But as I mentioned, the next time we get together, it's going to be for an hour. We'll spend a whole show together because in a few weeks you'll have a lot to talk about and you can give us a lot of updates. But for now, it's been a pleasure to catch up with you, Hank.
Ricky, always good to spend time with you.
You bet. This has been Representative Hank Zuber from coastal Mississippi. It's been a pleasure to spend time with him and Jeremy both this morning. Listen, have a great day, and we'll see you tomorrow.
Okay, y'all too.